The massive warship hung in space like a dark knife, its black metal hull reflecting no light from the nearby stars. On its bridge, High Commander Rack stood tall, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he watched another planet fall under Dominion rule. His species had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and moments like these had become boring routine. "My lord," one of his officers called out, "the planet's defense systems are disabled. Their leaders request mercy." Rack didn't turn around. "Standard procedure. Take their technology, destroy their military bases, and add them to our empire." His voice carried no emotion. This was the 100th planet his fleet had conquered this year alone. The Dominion's power was absolute. No species dared to challenge them anymore. Their warships numbered in the millions, their soldiers in the billions. Every new race they discovered followed the same pattern: fight, lose, and submit. The galaxy had become predictable, boring. In his private quarters later that day, Rack walked through his personal museum. Like all high-ranking Dominion commanders, he collected artifacts from extinct civilizations. It was considered a mark of status. His collection was impressive: weapons, tools, and art from dozens of dead species. But his pride was the human section. Humans were a mystery that had puzzled the Dominion for centuries. They had found thousands of abandoned human outposts, advanced technology, and most intriguingly, strange pods containing perfectly preserved human bodies. Scientists said these were some kind of sleep chambers, but no one had ever managed to wake them. Now they were just decorative pieces in museums across the empire. Rack stopped in front of his favorite pod. Inside, a human male floated in clear liquid, appearing to be asleep. The pod's metal surface was covered in writing in the human language, which their best scholars still couldn't fully translate. "Such a waste," Rack muttered, touching the cold surface of the pod. The humans had clearly been powerful once. Their ruins showed signs of incredible technology, some of which the Dominion still couldn't understand. But like all others, they had vanished, leaving only mysteries behind. A soft beeping interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he commanded. His chief scientist, Officer Len, hurried in. "High Commander, we found something extraordinary in the ruins on the planet we just conquered." Rack sighed. Everything was extraordinary to the scientists. "What is it?" "Another human facility, sir. But this one is different. It's still drawing power from somewhere. The energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before." This caught Rack's attention. Active power in ruins thousands of years old. That was new. "Show me," he ordered. The holographic display showed a massive underground complex. Unlike most ruins they found, this one was nearly intact. And true to Len's words, power readings pulsed through its walls like blood through veins. "There are hundreds of pods down there, sir," Len said excitedly. "All powered, all preserved. We need to study them." "No," Rack's voice was firm. "Standard procedure. Strip anything valuable, then add it to the museum catalog. Those pods are just more dead relics." "But sir..." "That's an order." Rack turned away. "The humans are dead, like every other species that was too weak to survive. Only the Dominion endures. Only the strong survive." Later that night, as his ship cruised through hyperspace, Rack stood again before the human pod in his collection. Something about these creatures bothered him. Their ruins told stories of a species that had been powerful, innovative, and dangerous. The Dominion erased all records of species that might inspire rebellion, but the human ruins were everywhere, impossible to completely hide. In the pod, the human's face looked peaceful. Rack had always thought it looked more like sleep than death. A ridiculous idea, of course. Nothing could sleep for thousands of years. He turned away, missing the tiny light that began blinking on the pod's control panel. As he left the room, the ancient machine started a sequence that had waited millennia to begin. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been feared. The first thing Jack felt was cold. Not the biting cold of space, but the gentle chill of waking up on a winter morning. His military training kicked in before his eyes opened. Stay still. Assess. Listen. Something was wrong with his pod. The familiar hum of its systems had changed. Through his closed eyelids, he sensed lights that shouldn't be there. And there were voices, strange, clicking voices speaking a language he didn't understand. The last thing he remembered was the evacuation order. Earth's defense systems had detected the approaching extinction-level threat. Operation Long Sleep had been humanity's last resort, hiding their best and brightest in secret facilities across the galaxy, waiting for the danger to pass. How long had he slept? A loud hiss made him tense. The pod was opening. Now or never. Jack's eyes snapped open as the cold liquid drained away. He found himself staring at two aliens. They looked like a cross between lizards and birds, with scaled skin and sharp eyes. They wore uniform-like clothing covered in strange symbols. Both stepped back in shock when they saw him move. Jack pulled himself out of the pod, his muscles responding perfectly thanks to the pod's preservation systems. He stood tall, water dripping from his black stasis suit, and studied the room. He was in some kind of museum. Display cases filled with human artifacts lined the walls. And his pod, his military-grade stasis unit, had been treated like a decoration. The aliens were making excited noises into some kind of communicator. Jack's mind raced. He needed information fast. His eyes found what he was looking for: a computer terminal on the wall. Now he just had to hope the universal translator in his stasis suit still worked. "Stay calm," he said to the aliens, raising his empty hands. "I mean no harm." The suit processed his words, converting them into a series of clicks and chirps. The aliens froze. The taller one responded slowly, and Jack's suit translated. "Impossible. The humans are extinct, dead for 8,000 years. 8,000 years. Jack kept his face neutral, but his heart raced. 8,000 years of human history lost. 8,000 years during which these aliens had apparently taken over. "Clearly," Jack said carefully, "reports of our extinction were wrong." More aliens burst into the room, these ones wearing what were clearly military uniforms. Their weapons were pointed at Jack, but he noticed their hands were shaking. They'd never seen a living human before. The next few hours were a blur of tests and questions. Jack answered carefully, revealing nothing important. He learned he was on a Dominion warship, that they ruled most of the known galaxy, and that humanity was considered a long-dead civilization of great interest to their scientists. They didn't know about the other pods. They didn't know about the emergency protocols. And most importantly, they didn't know about the quantum transmitter hidden in Jack's suit, now silently broadcasting a wake-up signal to every human stasis pod in range. In his new quarters, comfortable but clearly monitored, Jack watched the stars through a window. The Dominion thought they were studying him. In reality, he was learning everything about them. Their language, their technology, their weaknesses. They were powerful but stagnant. In 8,000 years, they'd barely advanced beyond the technology level humanity had reached before the evacuation. They'd grown comfortable in their power, lazy in their dominance. Jack allowed himself a small smile as he detected the first reply to his quantum transmission. Somewhere out there, another pod was waking up. Then another, and another. The Dominion had spent thousands of years building their empire. They'd grown. Dr. Kate Miller woke up exactly 3 days after Jack. Her pod was in a research facility on a distant moon, where Dominion scientists had been trying to unlock its secrets for centuries. They weren't prepared for it to suddenly activate and release its occupant. Unlike Jack's military background, Kate was one of humanity's top experts in alien technology. As she sat in her new laboratory, given to her by the eager Dominion researchers who thought they were studying her, she had to hold back her laughter. They had no idea she was actually studying them. "Fascinating," she said, examining their computer systems with carefully hidden recognition. "Your technology is interesting." She didn't mention that humanity had developed better systems thousands of years ago. The Dominion scientists preened at her apparent amazement. They had no idea that every night, while they slept, she was quietly accessing their most secure databases through methods they couldn't even understand. Through the quantum network that connected the awakened humans, she shared her findings with Jack and the others. Their entire empire runs on copied technology, she reported. They never invented anything themselves. They just took it from conquered species and figured out how to use it. Meanwhile, in another sector of space, Tom Wright, a human military engineer, had awakened in a museum similar to Jack's. Within a week, he had convinced the Dominion that he was a simple historian, fascinated by how their empire worked. They gave him access to their historical records, not realizing he was mapping every military base in their territory. Their ships are strong, he sent through the quantum network, but they all use the same designs, the same tactics. No innovation, no creativity. They haven't had to think differently for thousands of years. More pods activated each day. The humans chose their roles carefully. Some posed as simple curiosities, happy to be studied. Others offered their skills to the Dominion, who were eager to learn from living examples of a species they had long admired. In his quarters on the warship, Jack coordinated their efforts. The quantum network now connected 37 awakened humans, each strategically placed throughout Dominion space. Their enemies didn't even realize they were connected. The Dominion sensors couldn't detect quantum communications, another technology they had never developed. Report status. Jack sent through the network one night. Security systems mapped in the central sectors, came one reply. Fleet movements tracked and patterns analyzed, said another. Located 3 more storage facilities with human pods, added a third. Kate's message was particularly interesting. Found something big. There's a massive energy signature at these coordinates. It's using human quantum shielding. The Dominion sensors can't detect it. Jack studied the coordinates. They matched an old record in his military database. That's a Phase 3 facility, he sent back. One of our largest emergency bases. If it's still active, it could have thousands of pods, Kate finished. Maybe more. The humans worked quietly, carefully. During the day, they played their roles. Grateful survivors, eager to learn about the empire that now ruled their galaxy. But at night, they prepared. They sent wake-up signals to more pods. They gathered intelligence. They planted backdoors in Dominion computer systems. Each small step was part of a larger plan. The Dominion's power came from fear. Species obeyed because they were afraid. But humans had faced extinction and chosen to sleep rather than surrender. They had prepared, planned, and waited. Now they were awake, and they remembered what the Dominion had forgotten. The power of innovation, the strength of thinking differently. In his quarters, Jack received another message through the quantum network. This one made him. High Commander Rack couldn't understand why his perfect empire was suddenly having so many small problems. Equipment failures, communication glitches, computer errors. Each incident was minor, but together they formed a pattern he didn't like. Another malfunction in Sector 7, his officer reported. Third one this week. Rack growled in frustration. Send repair teams, and find out why this keeps happening. What he didn't know was that the repair team's new supervisor was human. Marcus had awakened 2 weeks ago and quickly impressed the Dominion with his technical skills. Now he had access to their most important systems. Everything looks normal, Marcus reported after inspecting the malfunction. He didn't mention that he had just installed a small quantum device that would give humans control of the entire sector's defense grid when needed. Across the Empire, more humans took key positions. The Dominion's arrogance worked against them. They were so convinced of their superiority that they never questioned why these ancient humans were so good at understanding their technology. In a distant space station, Jack met secretly with Kate and Tom. Their private chamber was shielded from Dominion sensors by technology their enemies couldn't detect. Phase 1 is complete, Kate reported. We have access to their primary systems. Their entire communication network is compromised. Tom pulled up a holographic map. We've located 57 human storage facilities. 32 are still active. Total count of viable pods, 15,342. Jack nodded. And the big one. The phase deep in an ancient nebula, hidden from Dominion sensors by quantum shields, humanity's greatest military installation stirred to life. The Phase 3 facility was massive. A space station larger than most cities, containing an entire fleet preserved in temporal stasis. Admiral Helen West opened her eyes in her pod, her mind immediately clear. As the highest-ranking military officer in Operation Long Sleep, she had been preserved with her entire command staff. Now, as she stepped out of her pod and saw hundreds of others awakening around her, she felt a fierce pride. "Status report," she ordered, her voice strong despite 8,000 years of sleep. "All systems operational," her second-in-command reported. The quantum core never lost power. Preservation protocols at 100% efficiency. The fleet is ready. Through the station's massive windows, Helen could see them. Row after row of battleships, destroyers, and carriers, all maintained in perfect condition by automated systems. The pride of human engineering, the Defender-class battleships, floated at the front of the formation, their black hulls seeming to swallow the light. "Message from advanced teams," an officer called out. "Phase 2 is complete. Dominion systems are compromised. They're blind in 30% of their territory and don't even know it yet." Helen nodded. She had awakened to find detailed reports from Jack and the other advanced teams. They had done brilliant work, infiltrating the Dominion and preparing for this moment. Now it was time for the next phase. "Power up the fleet," she ordered. "Wake all crews, and send word to our people across Dominion space. It's time." The station hummed with activity as thousands of pods opened. Crews ran to their ships, engineers powered up ancient engines, and weapons systems charged for the first time in millennia. The Dominion had no idea that the largest fleet they had never detected was about to emerge. On her flagship, the Defender-class battleship, Humanity's Dawn, Helen received an urgent message. A Dominion patrol fleet had detected their power signatures and was coming to investigate. "Perfect," she said. "Let's show them what they're dealing with." The nebula lit up as quantum drives engage. One by one, humanity's ships emerged from hiding. The Dominion fleet, 20 ships strong, froze in space as they saw what they were facing. 200 human warships, led by 5 Defender-class battleships, moved into attack formation. Each Defender was twice the size of the largest Dominion vessel, bristling with weapons that no living being had seen in action for 8,000 years. "This is Admiral Helen West of the Human Defense Fleet," she broadcast on all frequencies. "To the approaching Dominion vessels, you have 2 minutes to surrender." The Dominion ships held position, clearly confused. Their scans couldn't penetrate the quantum shielding on the human vessels. They had no idea what they were facing. "Energy spike," an officer called out. "They're charging weapons." Helen sighed. Some things never change. All ships, defensive formation Delta. Show them what humanity remembers about war. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. The Dominion ships fired their most powerful weapons and watched in shock as quantum shields absorbed every blast. Then the human fleet responded. Weapons that hadn't been seen in 8 millennia opened fire. Quantum torpedoes phased through Dominion shields as if they weren't there. Temporal cannons froze enemy ships in bubbles of stop time. And the Defender-class ships demonstrated why they had earned their name. When it was over, 19 Dominion ships floated dead in space. Helen had ordered one to be left intact. "Send them home," she commanded. "Let them tell their leaders what they saw here. And broadcast this message across all Dominion frequencies, to all species enslaved by the Dominion. Humanity has returned. The time of fear is ending." As the surviving Dominion ship fled, Helen watched her fleet move into position. Thousands of other human pods were awakening across the galaxy. The Dominion was about to learn why their museums had been filled with warnings about humanity's power. They had ruled through fear for 8,000 years. Now they were about to learn what real fear felt like. High Commander Rack stood before the Dominion High Council, his scales pale with fear. The massive chamber was silent as he played the recording from his fleet's only surviving ship. On the giant screen, human warships moved with impossible grace. Weapons that defied understanding cut through Dominion ships like paper. And that final message, "Humanity has returned," echoed through the chamber. "Impossible," one council member whispered. "They were extinct." "They were sleeping," Rack corrected, his voice hollow. "All this time, in our museums, in our storage facilities, they were just waiting. And now they've awakened their military force." Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Human pods were activating everywhere. Dominion computer systems were failing, and strangest of all conquered species were beginning to resist. In the Centauri sector, 3 enslaved worlds had already declared independence. Their people fought with weapons that hadn't existed the day before, gifts from humanity's arsenal. "The humans are giving advanced technology to the slave worlds," another council member said. "They're teaching them to fight back." Rack had seen the reports. Human quantum shields now protected rebel bases. Human weapons armed rebel fighters. And human advisors taught them tactics that the Dominion had never seen before. "Launch the fleet," the council leader ordered. "All of it. Crush these humans and the rebels before." The chamber's lights suddenly went dark. When they came back on, every screen showed the same image. A human woman in a military uniform. "This is Admiral Helen West of the Human Defense Fleet," she said calmly. "Your empire was built on fear and cruelty. You've enslaved countless species, stolen their resources, and crushed their spirits. That ends today." Rack watched in horror as reports came in. The Dominion's mighty fleet, over 10,000 ships, was moving to attack. But the humans weren't running. In sector after sector, human ships appeared from quantum tunnels that Dominion sensors couldn't detect. They didn't just fight, they danced through space, using maneuvers that should have been impossible. "How?" Rack demanded, watching another battle group fall. "How are they beating our numbers?" The answer came from a surprising source, one of the slave species representatives who had been forced to serve the council. "Because," the alien said, standing tall for the first time in years, "they're not afraid. And neither are we. Not anymore." Across the Empire, revolution erupted. Slave worlds that had obeyed out of fear now saw hope. The humans didn't just give them weapons, they gave them courage. In space, the battle rage. Dominion ships fought with brute force and overwhelming numbers. Human ships fought with creativity and technologies that had been legend even before their long sleep. Defender-class battleships led the charge, their quantum cores powering weapons that ignored Dominion defenses completely. Smaller human vessels struck from impossible angles, using tactics that no one had seen in 8,000 years. On his flagship, Rack watched his empire crumbling. Half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. The other half was scattered across space, trying to fight an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "Surrender." Admiral West's voice came again. "Surrender, and we'll show more mercy than you ever did. Fight on, and learn why your ancestors feared us so much that they kept our sleeping bodies as warnings in their museums." Rack looked at his tactical display. The Dominion fleet, the most powerful force in known space for 8,000 years, was being torn apart by an enemy they had thought extinct. But it wasn't just the humans they were fighting now. Every slave species, every oppressed world, had joined the battle. The humans had given them something the Dominion never had: hope. As another Defender-class battleship emerged from a quantum tunnel directly in front of his flagship, Rack finally understood. The Dominion had ruled through fear for 8 millennia. But humanity had just shown the galaxy that fear could be overcome. and his empire was about to fall. The final battle for the galaxy took place above the Dominion's capital world. The remaining Dominion fleet, still over 5,000 ships strong, faced off against the combined forces of humanity and the freed slave species. Admiral Helen West stood on the bridge of humanity's dawn, watching the massive fleet formations. Behind her human ships, vessels of a dozen different species moved into position. Some were ancient ships hidden away for centuries. Others were Dominion ships captured and turned against their former masters. The Dominion fleet is approaching, her tactical officer reported. They're using their traditional attack pattern. Helen nodded. The Dominion never changed, never adapted. That was why they would lose. All ships, execute Operation Sunrise, she commanded. The human fleet split into precise formations. Defender-class battleships took the lead, their quantum shields glowing with power. Behind them, ships from the freed worlds moved into positions they had practiced for days. On his flagship, High Commander Rack watched the enemy fleet's strange movements with growing unease. In the week since the humans had revealed themselves, his mighty empire had lost control of 30% of its territory. Slave worlds were rising up everywhere, armed with human weapons and tactics. Their fleet is smaller than ours, his officer said hopefully. We can crush them with numbers. Rack wasn't so sure. He had seen too many certain victories turn into devastating defeats this past week. But he had no choice. The Council had given him one final chance to save the Empire. All ships, attack, he ordered. The space between the fleets lit up with energy weapons and torpedoes. Dominion ships advanced in tight formations, concentrating their fire on the human battleships. Then the humans showed them why adaptation was more powerful than tradition. The Defender-class ships activated their quantum fields, but instead of just defending, they channeled the enemy fire through their systems. The absorbed energy was redirected to the ships of their allies, charging their weapons to impossible levels. Now, Helen commanded. The freed world ships opened fire with their newly charged weapons. Each shot carried the combined power of dozens of Dominion ships, enhanced by human quantum technology. The Dominion's tight formations, perfect for attacking, became death traps. Hundreds of Dominion ships exploded in the first volley. The survivors tried to regroup, but the human fleet was already moving, executing maneuvers that looked like chaos, but were actually a carefully planned dance. Impossible, Rack whispered, watching his fleet being torn apart. How can they coordinate such complex movements? The answer came as his ship's systems suddenly failed. All across his fleet, computers shut down, communications died, and weapons went silent. Jack's voice came through every speaker. Did you really think we'd waste our time in your museums and research labs just studying? We've had access to your systems for weeks. The human fleet and their allies struck the defenseless Dominion ships from all sides. It wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a statement. Fear and control were being replaced by cooperation and innovation. Enough. Helen's voice broadcasted across all frequencies. Your fleet is beaten. Your systems are compromised. Surrender now, and let's end this without more death. In the council chamber on the capital world, the Dominion leaders faced a choice they had never imagined. Surrender or be destroyed by a species they had thought extinct. They surrendered. The days that followed brought massive changes to the galaxy. The Dominion's empire was dissolved. Each species was given back control of their worlds. But humanity didn't just disappear back into legend. Instead, they helped create something new. The Galactic Alliance, a union of free worlds where knowledge was shared, not hoarded, where strength came from cooperation, not fear. 1 month after the final battle, Helen stood with Jack, Kate, and representatives from dozens of species in the former council chamber. 8,000 years ago, she said to the gathered assembly, humanity faced extinction. We chose to sleep, to wait for a time when we could return. We never imagined we'd wake to find a galaxy in chains. She looked at the former slave species, now standing proud and free. But we also found strength in unexpected places. Every species here proved that fear can be overcome, that tyranny can be defeated, that the galaxy can change for the better. The chamber erupted in cheers from a dozen different species. The era of fear was over. A new age of hope had begun.